Welcome to Wednesday Wanderings. My name is Mark Long, Rector of the Parish of St Andrew in Newlands, Cape Town. Welcome to a wet, windy and cold Cape Town today. We've had a few days of sun, not necessarily warmth, but sun and those beautiful blue skies that we get here. But thankful today for the rain too, and for the goodness that that brings. There's a sense that the rain is a reminder of one of our gospel readings today, or the gospel reading from the Eucharist readings for today, which is from Matthew 13, the parable of the sower, which I'm sure you know well, and the interpretation of that. I listened to a morning meditation which focuses on one of the readings for the day, and today, of course, was this gospel. And the point was made, again, helpfully, and again, one that I've heard before, but just pointed out the wonderful generosity of the sower in this picture. Because the seed falls on fertile ground, it falls on rocky ground, it falls on ground that will prove to be weed-ridden. And for most farmers, they would avoid wasting their seed on rocky ground and ground that they knew would be likely weed-ridden. And yet the sower here, representing God, just casting out that seed, generously, profligatively, I think you know what I mean. I'm not going to get my tongue around that this morning. And there's a sense of what will the ground do with these seeds? What will the seeds do in the ground? And what growth will there be? And the meditation asked the question in terms of, how open are we to allowing the seed of God's love, often received through our reading of Scripture, but in many other ways. How do we receive that, and how do we allow that to be nurtured in our lives? How open, how vulnerable, I guess, are we to really allowing that seed to root itself well and to grow well? And a wonderful sense that even rocky ground, even weed-strewn ground, is not without potential. And I'm reminded of seeing wild figs, for example, sort of attaching themselves to rocky cliff edges close to water. And it's amazing how, in a space that really there's no fertile ground, the tree actually grows and there's beauty in it. And so no matter how rocky we may perceive our lives to be, no matter how weed-ridden, no matter how difficult, there's always potential for the goodness of God to grow in our lives, for that word to take place and to grow. And so just myself asking that question, wondering, how open am I actually to the seeds of God in my life? And how conscious am I of watering and nurturing those seeds, no matter the ground in my life that they may fall on? And is there a sense of expectancy for me in what God might do in those more difficult aspects of life and relationship? And so often, in my experience, it's not in the fertile areas where I think God should be working that I find God in my life. I find him very often in those more rocky, weed-strewn places. And as God works in those areas, so they are transformed. I am transformed. So my relationships with others, with myself, with God, with the world around me, all of that is transformed. And I'm just struck as we are still coming to terms with all the violence and protests, looting that went with the insurrection in KZN and Gauteng. Here in the Cape, we're dealing with a huge taxi war and the implications of that. And so much of that is rocky ground, it's weed-strewn ground. And the temptation is to say, there is no hope. But as we look at how communities in KZN, how communities in Gauteng are coming together to rebuild, how strangers have been arriving to help sweep up, clean up, neaten up, how communities have come together, how in fact as a nation we're being called back to really focus on the importance of the rule of law and a change in the national conversation away from some of the other issues that have, in a sense, taken over our lives to really saying rule of law is really critical to our future and to our hope. And it's been wonderful to see communities standing up to that, whatever the motivation may or may be there. And to trust that God is sowing seeds in that space. To trust that in the Western Cape with the taxi violence, and not necessarily incidents of violence, but the intimidation that takes place, that people on the ground experience, the fears that are built on, all of that is very rocky ground. And again, to trust that God is sowing seeds into that space, and that in terms of the ongoing negotiations with the various taxi groupings, that something good can grow out of that. And for me, the need to be praying for those who are the farmers in that context, who really are seeking to prepare the ground and to plant seeds that will build something more helpful for our future in those relationships and in many others in our land. And so I think today, for me, just wanting to say, let's look at our own lives and where the seeds of God are being sown and how we're nurturing it. But let's look beyond ourselves, and hopefully as we nurture God's seeds in our lives, we will be setting an example. We will have something to offer to others, be it family, be it friendship groups, be it the wider community that we live in. And my prayer is that God would send the rain, and that rain may nourish, together with all the nutrients in the ground, may nourish these seeds, that we may see a true hope for ourselves as people of South Africa, both South Africans and those that live amongst us. And may God bless us. May God bless Africa. May God protect us. May God guide and transform our leaders. May we know that blessing of God in all that we are and in all that we do.